Hey, this is Antonio. Welcome back to my channel. Now, who's ready for some fighting words? In this video, I'm going to talk about Errol Spence, the truth. And of all people, what's the likelihood of it? Conor Benn. So, as we all know, Conor Benn and Errol Spence have been going back and forth on Twitter. Errol Spence even going as far as saying that his father cheated. Conor Benn's father, Nigel Benn, the UK legend Nigel Benn, is also a cheat, and you get it from your daddy. And which was a low blow, but you know what? Speculations are speculations, and here we are. And in terms of boxing lately, I guess nothing is off the table. If anybody remembers Smith and Eubank at that press conference, so anything is on the table these days. In which case, Earl went at him, and he went at him pretty heavy. He started talking about his dad. And if anybody knows anything about Conor Benn, all you have to do is mention his dad, and that's going to ruffle his feathers. In which case, Conor wasn't shy, and he fired right back. Here's my thing. I feel like Conor kind of, I don't want to say he's starting beef, but he's definitely not letting anything slide, mainly because he has to get his credibility back. Because despite what the higher-ups have said, and despite his being reinstated, he still needs the respect of you and me, the viewers, the fans, the people, who pay for him to make what he generates. And also, he needs the respect of his peers, because how are you going to get a fight if they don't respect you and they don't want to fight you? Or they don't believe that you are a clean fighter, knowing that they could risk their lives. Yes, their boxing record, that's great, but more importantly, their lives, if they get in the ring with you. Because maybe you're faster or stronger or a lot more durable than what you should be. So these beefs that he's taking on, the beef with him and Tank, and the beef with him and Errol Spence, who knows who's next? There's always lingering gonna be the beef with Chris Eubank Jr. That fight was supposed to happen, so by all means, it's always gonna be there. And now Chris Eubank Jr. really has some fire to throw at Conor Benn. So it's always going to be there. And I feel like he needs a worthy enough opponent to get back in the ring with. And, if Errol Spence calls you out or says anything out of place, by all means, you jump on it. And maybe you can make something of this. So like I said, Conor is back. So, I feel like the higher-ups and the powers that be were going to make sure that he came back. It's one thing if we're talking about somebody who isn't well received, isn't well liked, someone who doesn't generate a lot, someone who isn't marketable. But when you're talking about somebody who's the son of a boxing legend, somebody who is very marketable, and somebody who can easily cross over in terms of markets. Yes, he's from the UK, but he can easily fight in some place like Saudi Arabia. He can easily fight in some place like in Vegas. He can easily fight in these places. Like I said, his marketability is very crossover-ish. So there's not going to be an issue there. So when you're looking at him being sidelined at such a pivotal time in his career, it's crucial. No, you get him in there. No matter how, you get him in there. All right, think about it like this. That's just money not being made. That's potential millions of dollars, but it's potential millions of dollars just not being made. So no, I definitely think, do I think he's innocent? No, I really don't. And if you follow this channel at any point, you know that I am a fan of Conor Benn. I like to see him. I like that fire. I like that Benn fire inside of him. But do I think he should be allowed to just come back in? No. Even if it was not intentional, I think he needs to sit down for a moment to really evaluate who's in his life, who's in his corner, who's on his team, and what he's being allowed to intake at all times. At least a year. At least a year. I mean, really, it should be like 2 years, because these guys only fight one time a year anyway. So you need like 2 years to really teach them a lesson, or at least attempt to look on the outside that you're teaching them a lesson. You need at least 2 years for that. I guess the question is now with Conor Benn is, can you really trust him? And I guess on one side you can make the argument, well, look at the lengths that he went through to prove his innocence. But then again, anybody would do that. So I don't really consider that. Listen, if I get, I don't know, if I break the law or if I get caught breaking the law or something, I'm not going to go to court and plead. No, I'm going to go to court with a lawyer. So I suppose anybody would do that. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's innocent just because he fought it. No, that doesn't necessarily make you innocent. It doesn't. But what do I think about him and Errol Spence? I think this is a good fight. This is a great style matchup, actually. What's the likelihood of this fight? Actually, it could happen. It could happen at 147. It could happen at 154. Keep in mind, Conor Benn was going up for Chris Eubank Jr. anyway. He could just simply stay at that weight since Errol Spence is going to fight at 154 anyway. And the reality is Errol Spence has no real intention of sticking around at 147 anyway, win, lose, or draw in his next bout. That being said, if I was Conor, I would stick around at that weight and just prepare at that weight anyway, because this is always a fight that could have happened. It's not like it's not a fantasy matchup. A fantasy matchup is, well, I don't know, what if anyway could go up to 135 and then him and Tank could fight? That's a fantasy matchup. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is. Like, it's a fantasy matchup. But to see Conor Benn just stay where he's already planted himself because of the Chris Eubank Jr. fight, and then wait for Errol Spence to handle his business with Keith Thurman, I don't see why not. That should not and would not be an issue or a problem. It greatly benefits Conor Benn. Why? Because he would get his respect back. He would get some form of trust back through you and myself, the viewers. And I think he would get the respect from his peers in boxing. Once again, but it would fall back to the question of, well, are you clean? Now, I'm pretty sure it's Errol Spence. So there would be random drug and, urine testing. And that's all gravy. But then there would still be like lingering questions like, well, what are the lasting effects of the last time you did something? Or I suppose something along those lines. Either way, to be dead honest with you, I believe Errol Spence would beat Conor Benn fully juiced. Like if he was like, remember in the video games, like, you would be down in energy and it would show the bars and say there's like 5 bars and you'd be at like 2 bars because you fought so many of the bad guys in the video game. And then, you beat a big monster and then your energy gets charged back up. I don't care if his energy is completely charged back up. Errol Spence beats Conor Benn juiced or natural. Like, it doesn't matter. Errol Spence outboxes Conor Benn and Conor Benn attempts to box. And Errol Spence beats the living daylights out of Conor Benn if he wants to scrap it out in a schoolyard brawl. I do think it would be an entertaining fight. Because Errol Spence is not a knockout artist, I believe he would actually have to beat Conor Benn up. In which case, I do believe that the fight would make it to the late rounds. And Conor Benn just having that no quit in him and that dog inside of him, I could see him getting up multiple times. But the body attack from Errol Spence, it would be a great fight because Conor Benn has a vicious body attack as well. But the boxing ability of Errol Spence and the angles of Errol Spence and the pressure from both guys coming forward, like neither one of these guys would take a back foot or a back step at all at any given time, which is why I could see a knockout. Because I don't see anybody backing up. Errol Spence does not have a backup mentality, and Conor Benn doesn't have a backup mentality. So unfortunately, somebody would have to get battered until they can't get up anymore, or just somebody throws in a towel. But I honestly think Errol Spence would beat Conor Benn natural or completely juiced up, completely supercharged. I think Errol Spence could beat Conor Benn. I don't think that's a stretch or anything like that. I don't think it's a stretch. Yeah, I definitely don't think that's a stretch. I think Errol Spence would have his way with Conor Benn, and in more ways than one. I feel like Conor Benn only has one way to win, and that's a devastating knockout. But again, based on his situation that I guess he's now coming out of, and he's been quote unquote exonerated from. We don't know how many of those fights are real or not. Chris Algieri, when he fought him, he said he shouldn't be able to do these things. So I really don't know. But I do know it wouldn't matter. Errol Spence is a big, strong person at 147. And I imagine he'd be even more comfortable at 154. Not to mention him sparring Jermell Charlo all the time. There's just no way that Conor Benn would even have a chance against Errol Spence. But while it lasts, it will be a great and entertaining fight while it lasts. And that's the only way to put it, while it lasts. You tell me what you think down below. What do you think on the thoughts of Conor Benn facing off against an Errol Spence? And what do you think about Errol Spence jumping on Conor Benn's back and basically accusing him? Do you think he's right to do so? What do you think? Drop your thoughts down below. I would love to hear what you have to say. And as always, please like, please share, please subscribe to this channel.